Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Healing with Wisdom, where every week we discuss modern and ancient practical tools to make sense of our lives and break free from the present day chaos. I'm Pepe, and I'm very excited to have you with us for today's episode. Today, we will talk about Stoicism again and how this ancient philosophy can help anyone, especially through tough times, live a more tranquil, meaningful, and enjoyable life, as well as becoming a highly virtuous person, that is, someone with high moral standards. This is the fifth episode and the last one of a series of episodes where we are talking about Stoicism and its different teachings and how to apply them to modern life. In the previous episode, we've explored a little bit the idea of accepting disabilities and illnesses, as well as your own death and other people's ones too, and how to overcome the fear of it. Today, we will talk about the meaning of friendships and love from the Stoic viewpoint, as well as dealing with loneliness. So, before we start, as always, I would like to remind you that Stoicism is a practical philosophy. What does that mean? It means that you can go on and on listening to my words about Stoicism or reading anything that you want about Stoicism, but if you don't put it into practice, everything that you're going to learn, it's going to be absolutely useless. So if you want it to be useful, make it practical. Stoicism is a practical philosophy and it's not interested in theories for theory's sake. So let's go ahead with the episode, and let's start by talking about loneliness. So let's see how our Stoic friends will deal with loneliness. Loneliness is a feeling that everyone, at least once in their life, had. It's inevitable. I think feeling lonely at some point in your life, it's also crucial to your personal growth as an adult, and to understand that, believe it or not, even if we are surrounded by friends and family, we are all in our own journey, and sometimes we are just going to have to deal with some challenges alone. So nowadays, loneliness seems to be an emotion that people tend to experience rather often. It seems like it's quite controversial because we are in the age of digital connectivity. Social media platform have billions of users. You can instant message anyone, and it's so easy, right? However, many of us feel quite isolated than ever, and we are living the so-called loneliness epidemic. But is the feeling of loneliness truly a modern phenomenon, or is it an aspect that always conditioned humans also in the past? First of all, we need to define what loneliness is. Loneliness, for me, is about feeling unsupported and disconnected, even in a crowd, even within your family, even with your friend circle. In fact, feeling lonely has nothing to do with the physical solitude, because you can feel lonely at home with your family if there is a lack of genuine connection, and you can indeed be in a positive state and feel connected in physical solitude, even if nobody is around you for days. So, loneliness is the state in which you feel disconnected and you feel that you have nothing to do with the people around you, even though physically there are people around you. That's the difference between loneliness and solitude. While in loneliness there is a sense of disconnectedness, in solitude this sense of being disconnected is not present, even though physically there may not be anyone around you. Okay, so it's there are two things that sit on the opposite side of the spectrum. The crucial factor that determine whether we land on the spectrum leaning towards loneliness or leaning towards solitude, it's our own choice, right? We choose whether to feel lonely or not. Believe it or not, even though you may think it's hard, we do and you do have a choice on how you want to feel. If you want to feel sad, you will be able to feel sadness. If you want to feel happiness, you will be able to feel happiness. And if you want to feel lonely, it's not that I'm not saying that people want to feel lonely, but it is a choice, even though it's subconscious. The feeling of loneliness starts in the moment in which we have a certain pattern of thinking in our head, right? So when we choose solitude, it can be empowering. Let me explain that. Solitude can be a time of reflection, right? You're not surrounded by anybody else, but it's a time of reflection and a time for yourself, for your personal growth and self sufficiency. Once you learn to be in solitude, it can be the best skill that anyone can ever learn in their life, really, because it is, for me, it's a vital aspect of personal growth. So, Stoicism, in fact, teaches that one can find peace in solitude by focusing on self reflection and personal growth. In other words, you need to learn to be alone, like physically alone, by utilizing this time alone to reach personal goals and milestones. Meditate, do some journaling, focus on your physical and mental health, reading, increasing your knowledge. Most of these things can all obviously be done in company as well. However, I believe that if you on purpose take some time to be by yourself, not being surrounded by anybody else, and while you're not surrounded by anybody else, really focus on yourself or any of these domain, any of these practices. Once you start practicing that every day or at least every week, that's when you won't fear the time when you actually will have to be physically alone because nobody's around you and you have no other option but being with yourself. In other words, learning how to be alone and with yourself will eliminate that feeling of loneliness that you feel when no one's around you and when you don't feel supported. Because when you are your own support, that's when feeling of loneliness is completely eliminated. Now, this is not possible 100% of the time. We are social animals. We thrive in social contest. We need others people's company, not in the sense that we want to be entertained by them, but in the sense that we couldn't really exist without other people. So it's a deeper, there's a deep reason why we crave company of other people. Whether you are extroverted or introvert, it doesn't matter. If even if you are introvert, you do crave others people, you do crave love from other people, and there is a deeper meaning behind that, which is an evolutionary response, because we couldn't really exist without other humans, right? However, practicing being with yourself as much as you can before that moment of potential loneliness kicks in. So if you are learning how to be with yourself, there is only so much loneliness that you can feel, and it can even be close to zero, right? So that is how you avoid the feeling of loneliness, by learning to be comfortable with yourself and comfortable in solitude. When we feel that we are forced into isolation, either by the circumstances or our own insecurity, that's when we feel lonely. But if you learn to enjoy your time alone and purposefully take time alone to be with yourself and away from others for a little bit of time every day or at least every week, your life will improve tremendously and you will probably often crave being in solitude and with yourself. I'm not saying that you should isolate yourself from the rest of the world and spend 7 years in Tibet meditating in silence. That's not doable for most of us, and we obviously all have responsibilities like work, like friends, family, and kids. I'm not even suggesting you run away from your responsibility or something. I'm suggesting that you develop enough interest in yourself and your personal growth so that you never fear the feeling of loneliness and embrace your solitude. For example, if I have to relate to myself, I like to do a little bit of meditation and pranayama as soon as I wake up in the morning, right? That's like my me time. I normally take 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, to just be alone, meditate, breathe, and practice yoga. That's my me time. That's how I start the day. And no one can take that away from me. Like, I enjoy in that specific time of the day being alone. By being alone for a specific time every day, then I can also enjoy more being with others throughout the day, if I have to or if I want to, right? If morning it's hard for you because the kids are getting ready for school or you are starting early to work, just wake up 30, 60 minutes earlier to make sure that nobody can disturb you if you want to do that. If you want to do any other practice, whatever the time of the day it is, whatever practice it is, just make sure you take some time to be by yourself every day. Whether it's in the morning or it's 10, 20, 30 minutes or whatever feels comfortable in the evening. You can take a journal and write a little bit about how you felt throughout the day. Did something make you feel angry or impatient? Ask yourself why, Just try to kind of like spend some time with yourself as if yourself was a friend that you were trying to find out about, right? So it's not necessarily about being alone and having to practice yoga and meditation and whatever. It's simply getting to know each other, you and yourself. 20, 30 minutes a day. Journaling is a very powerful practice as well. It helps a lot. It helped me a lot understanding myself. Once you start putting all these practices into your daily life, and once you start really focusing on your personal growth, that's when really loneliness is no longer a problem. Solitude, it's fine. Every time you're alone, that's a chance of being with yourself and practice self love, or nice things to do when you are alone are journaling or meditating, practicing exercises, whatever it is that works for you. Believe me, taking time for yourself every day, it's very powerful. And this is what it means to enjoy your life, really. It means becoming friend with yourself. Because after all, our perception of loneliness is just that. It's a perception, right? So you can be alone and you can feel fine, or you can be alone and you can feel lonely. It's a judgment that we place on our situation. Like the objective reality, if you are imagine you are alone, the objective reality is that you are alone with no one else around you. Now your interpretation of it might be that you feel lonely or that you feel fine. We might be alone, but it's our mindset that determines whether we feel lonely or not. This distinction is vital because it means we have the power to change our experience. We may not always control our circumstances, we cannot, in fact, control whether or not we have company around us, but we can decide how to react to these situations. Coming back to the Stoics, Epictetus believed in the power of resilience. So, while we might face situations that forces us into solitude, we can choose not to feel helpless. That's what Epictetus used to preach. Instead of viewing solitude as a negative state, we can see it as an opportunity to connect with ourselves, to reflect, and to grow. In today's world, where we are constantly bombarded with notification, messages, information, solitude can be a very rare gift. It's very hard to be in solitude for a few hours, like really in solitude. It's a chance to disconnect from the noise and truly listen to our thoughts and feelings. Instead of seeking validation from external sources, we can find it within ourselves. So, next time you find yourself alone, whether by choice or circumstances, remember Epictetus' wisdom. Embrace the solitude, reflect on your feelings, and remind yourself that you have the power to shape your experience. In doing so, you will not only combat feelings of loneliness, but also discover the strength and resilience that lies already within you. You just have to awaken. By the way, if you are finding this information valuable, make sure you spread the word further with friends and family that might find this valuable as well. By commenting, liking, and sharing our podcast, you're not only supporting us, but you are also spreading very useful knowledge to other people who might need it as well. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It's the best way to avoid missing out on future talks. And if you are listening to this on a podcast platform and you would rather watch the video instead, you can jump on YouTube. You'll find the link in the description for our YouTube channel, Healing with Wisdom. All right, so just to recap, we talked a little bit about the difference between loneliness and solitude, right? Solitude is the objective reality in which we are or we might be, that is being alone, not being surrounded by anybody else. Whereas loneliness, it's our way of seeing eventually this solitude, this situation of solitude. Okay, we can decide in a situation of solitude, we can decide whether or not to feel loneliness. So now that we talked a little bit about solitude and loneliness, we can also talk about friendship and love from a Stoic perspective. Again, of course, there is a reason why I started this talk by giving some guidance on how to embrace your solitude, because that's an essential step in order to love. When I when I say love, I mean unconditional love. In other words, once you learn to really be with yourself and in solitude, and you become friends with yourself, and that's when you start loving yourself as well, then that's when you will start to be able to love others unconditionally as well. Loving unconditionally means giving without expectations, loving someone not just for convenience. People who don't love themselves and seek validations from others love their friends, partner, or family just when they get something in return. This thing that they normally expect in return is probably sometimes company. Why? Because they haven't learned to be in solitude. Therefore, they feel extremely lonely when alone, and they need others people company. Having said this, ask yourself, what is for you true friendship and love? Because many people have different definitions of that, and that's a pretty good questions that have many different answers depending on how you interpret it. But there is also a Stoic answer to this. And if we take a trip back in time and explore the wisdom of the ancient Greco-Romans, they had a very fascinating way of understanding relationships, particularly love and friendships. Their insight might just help us navigate our modern connection with a little bit more clarity as well. Because in the busyness of our daily lives, often we find ourselves surrounded by people, right? Some people are acquaintances, some people are close friends, and some are family. But have we ever stopped to think about what truly binds us to these individuals? So, according to Stoics, there is different things that bind individuals, that bind individual together, and it can be shared interests, it can be mutual benefits, or it can be something deeper. So Epictetus defines three levels of friendships. In fact, we have friendships of utility, friendships of pleasure, and friendships of the good. Okay, imagine you are at your favorite coffee shop. Now you see a familiar face in front of you, and it's your um, hairdresser or your barber. You both wave and you have a chat. There is an interaction there, and according to the Stoics, this is quote friendship of utility. It's a friendship that is based on mutual benefits. You get a haircut, they earn a living. But beyond the transaction, there is a human connection. You are connected to this person, You are connected to this person for an utility reason. Okay, you can chat with them about your day, share a laugh. There is a little bit of a bond. It's not deep, but it's genuine, and it is based on utility in the sense that without that utility, that exchange of money for a great haircut, there wouldn't be any bond whatsoever, probably. Now, picture yourself at the gym, in a yoga class or in a hobby class, whatever it is that you like for exercising. The people you meet here in the gym or in the yoga class, they are what Stoics call friends of pleasure. So they are people that you have a bond with because you have shared interest. For example, you share a hobby, you share a passion for certain kind of sport, etc. And you can have the pleasure of a simple good conversation with these people as well. There is a little bit of a bond there too. This friendship may not last a lifetime, but they bring quite a bit of joy and color into our lives. And beyond that, beyond this friendship of utility and the friendship of pleasure, then we have the friends of the good. So what is the friends of the good? It's where things get really profound and deep with the friends of the good, because think of that one friend or family member who's always been there. We all have one. I hope so. The one who's seen you at your best and worst, and still they are still around. This is a friendship of the good. It's not about mutual benefits or shared interest. You may not have mutual benefits with them. They may not be your hairdresser, they may not be your boss, or you may not have many things, many interests in common, right? It's not about that though. It's about two souls connecting on a deeper level. You help each other grow, you evolve together no matter what. It's the kind of bond that's rare, but it's very transformative. And the only kind of friendship that is truly genuine, because it doesn't necessarily involve you two going to the gym together. Nobody makes a living out of this relationship, at least not in terms of money. So now that we touched base on friendships of utility, pleasure, and friendships of the good, what was the Stoic perspective about all of this, basically? What are we going to do with this information, essentially? According to Stoics, only the friendships of the good is the genuine friendship. The other types are also valuable friendships, but they were what the Stoics used to call, quote unquote, preferred indifferent, meaning that whether or not you have these friendships, it should be indifferent to you. But if you do have it, then you value it. But you don't go chasing after it. In simpler terms, they are nice to have, but not essential. Now you might wonder, why does all this wisdom matter? Well, in our age, with this social media and instant connection, and we're always exposed to. I feel like we always exposed to other people. If you want to, it's kind of easy to make very shallow friends. No, not that the people that you are meeting are shallow themselves, but the bond between you and other people might be shallow. So if someone, an average guy in the 80s, where there were no social media, had 5 or 6 friends, they were probably friends with which he had or she had deeper, meaningful relationship. They were really probably, like not meeting many people, but the very few people that they knew, they were there for them, and they were real friendships of the good. Whereas today, I feel like we are exposed to so many different realities through social medias and even in real life, that we know a lot of people, but there is a lot of shallow. It's a very shallow kind of situation between you and these so many acquaintances, that it's pretty easy to mistake for friends. It's easy to get lost in number of likes and followers and forget the value of deep and meaningful conversations. But if we take a moment to reflect, to truly understand the nature of our relationships, we can prioritize better. This does not mean that you should shrink your social circle so much that you only speak with one or two or three very few important people. You should, in fact, if you do have relationships that you find valuable, whether or not they are deep and meaningful, you should cherish them. But once we learn how to differentiate between friends of the good and the rest, we can invest time and energy into those bonds that truly matter. And in your heart, you know who is the friends of the good, who is the friends of pleasure, and who is the friends of utility. So focus most of your time in those relationships that enrich you as a person and let you grow and make your journey a little bit more meaningful. You can probably start to see how, while the world has changed immensely since the times of the Greco Romans, the essence of human connection remains the same. This quote problem of having to differentiate between friends of the good and friends of utility and of pleasure, it was already present in the Greco-Roman Empire. So it's not just here because of social media. Social media and the world that we live, the digital world that we live in nowadays, it's kind of like expanded this and made it more real, but it's a thing that it was there since the Stoic times. So that's exactly why Stoics were able to teach us these things, and that's so amazing to see how those teachings are still pretty useful nowadays. So just to recap, learn to be in solitude by focusing on yourself, on your personal growth, your physical and mental health without alienating yourself, of course. Then ask yourself, who are the people I love spending time with that add value to my life? Okay, ask yourself this question now, once this podcast ends, today when you're journaling before you go to bed or whatever, ask this question to yourself and write down the answer. It is very important. Identify those people, recognize their value in your life, and maybe tell them openly. Be open about it. Make sure they know. Make sure you do something to foster this relationship that you have with them. As a practical exercise, I'd highly recommend that you start journaling. It's a great exercise to put your emotion on paper and make sense of it. So you can also start to see them from a different perspective and reframe the negative ones, especially when you feel lonely, but also sad and angry. The act of reframing negative emotions and choosing to give them a positive tone is probably the most stoic thing to do. The act of reframing negative emotions and choosing to give them a positive tone is probably the most stoic thing to do. So I'd highly recommend you start journaling and writing about your emotion, especially when you feel angry or sad, and write on your journal about it and ask yourself why. Asking yourself why is very important when you're journaling. So with this episode, the series on Stoicism ends for now. I hope you enjoyed these 5 episodes. It was really fun to talk about it. I think Stoicism is something that everyone should know a little bit of, regardless of what's your culture background or religious background or whatever. I think it can teach something to everyone. So we talked about acceptance, we talked about spirituality, God, we talked about how to become a virtuous person from a Stoic perspective, how to foster your personal growth. We gave recommendation how to navigate illness and disability, the loss of people whom we love, and etc. I really hope you enjoyed this series. Let me know in the comments what do you think about what was your favorite episode. Maybe there will be something new in the future about Stoicism. If you have any suggestion or things that you would like me to talk about, please, especially when it comes to Stoicism, let me know in the comment. I do read all of them. And if you find today's podcast valuable, remember every subscribe, comment, and like, or even share the podcast is just not a support just to us, but it's a it's a step towards spreading a little bit more wisdom for people who need it as well. So take some moment to engage. It will create an amazing ripple effect, and Let me know what are your thoughts about this episode, if there is anything that can be improved. If you prefer watching the video instead of just listening to the podcast, you can jump on our YouTube channel, Healing with Wisdom. You'll find the link in the description, and you will also find some affiliate links for books that I really recommend if you want to really learn more about Stoicism. My favorite one is How to Be a Stoic from Massimo Pigliucci, probably the easiest one to understand. There are affiliate links, so I do get a small percentage, but at no extra cost to you. So if you want to support the podcast, please use that link. Until then, keep learning and keep sharing. See you on the next one.